On behalf of Sylvia, Derek, and Andrew, I would like to welcome all the family members and friends who are joining us as we pay tribute to Gerry, a very special man who has been a part of all of our lives. Some of you have traveled quite a distance to attend this celebration, and your presence is very much appreciated. So, I think at that, we're going to begin the introductions. And I'm going to begin with the immediate family. Sylvia is, of course, first on the list in so many ways. So, Sylvia, as you know, is over there. Derek, Gerry and Sylvia's eldest son, and his wife, Jody Waugh, live in the Brockville area. And they are over, there's Jody, and there's Derek. Great. Their three sons are Hayden. Where did Hayden end up? Over here, okay. Brayson, over there maybe, and Camden. Thank you. Andrew, Gerry and Sylvia's second son, and his wife in 19 days, Sarah Cameron. And they live on Mississippi Lake. Their children are Isaac and Hatley. Kim Shea is the niece of Gerry's, and she has come from Halifax. Thank you. Rob Falloon, a nephew of Gerry's, and his wife Trina have also come from Halifax. Ted McCormick, a cousin of Gerry's, is from Guelph. He's easy to catch. Don Gilbert, also a cousin of Gerry's, is from Niagara Falls. Where is, oh, over there, thank you. To introduce Sylvia's family, who are all connected with the Avonmore area, I will begin with Sylvia's mom, Darlene McMillan. Brian McMillan is Sylvia's brother, and his wife is Jane McMillan. Their son is Liam McMillan, and his fiancée is Manuela Rodriguez Bowen. Gwen Coleman is Sylvia's sister, and her husband is Dale Coleman. Their daughters are Natalie Lavalley, Stephanie Coleman and her partner Sean Parsons, and Brittany Coleman with her son Kenton Coleman and his fiancée Erica Mellenhorst. Keith Harris, a brother of Darlene's, and his wife Nancy are with us. John Adams, a cousin to Darlene, and his wife Jennifer are also here. Diane Robinson, wife of the late Ron Robinson, who was Sylvia's cousin and Gerry's close friend, is here with her daughter, Kelly Sheff, and Kelly's new baby, Lennon. Gerry and Ron were both huge fans of the Beatles, so this baby's name has special meaning for sure. As we move to friends, I'll begin with those from our teaching days at Perth and District Collegiate Institute. Michael and Sheila Huron. Jane and Ron Stoltz. John Gibb-Carsley. And we must congratulate John's son, as he was the lead Canadian Crown lawyer in the Meng Wanzhou case, which involved the two Michaels, who thankfully were recently released. Other close friends include Melanie McIntyre, a childhood and lifelong friend of Sylvia's, and her husband, Gerry London. Susan Burke is a Carleton Place friend, and Jill Walker is also a Carleton Place friend. Now, have I missed anyone? Looks good, thank you. Before we begin the tributes to Gerry, I want to thank Sylvia on behalf of all of us for selecting this perfect venue and for arranging a wonderful meal. About a week and a half ago, yes, let's thank her. About a week and a half ago, Sylvia and I sat down for the afternoon to combine our thoughts for the tribute. As we sat and chatted, I was extremely impressed by her strength, her organization, and by all the special memories she shared with me. At that time, Sylvia asked that I extend a very special thanks to the people who have so willingly helped in the preparation for this celebration. Jane, Sylvia's sister-in-law, created the invitation. Gwen, her sister, volunteered for the beautiful flower arrangements. Brittany, her niece, assisted in preparing the slideshow. And Liam, her nephew, along with his fiancée, Manuela, took over the technical issues. Obviously, a great job was done on all parts. To begin the tributes, I would like to introduce Mike Huron, a very close friend of Gerry and Sylvia's. Mike taught at Perth and District Collegiate Institute, and he was best man at Gerry and Sylvia's wedding. Mike, would you please come forward? It's a bit of a maze, but too many flowers. And the mic is on.
You hear me? Okay, my name is Mike Huron, as you've just heard, and I met Gerry.
The mic's not on, I don't think.
Hold it closer to your mouth.
Oh, is that better?
That's better.
Sorry. Okay, well, I met Gerry about 50 years ago. When he became a staff member at PDCI, he was one of the new staff members that joined the staff in the early 70s like myself. Time passed. Gerry, a true gentleman, and not afraid to speak his mind, soon recognized as a thoughtful and an intelligent man. Never heard him speak a harsh word of anybody, but appreciated others rather than criticize. It was good to be in his company. He liked a good discussion. He liked to talk with his fellow teachers, people like John Gibcarsley, Gus Caniel, Al McLean, Mary and Carl Kelly, and others. His outlook on life was positive. I should mention here that he was a bachelor and looked after himself in a small upstairs apartment on North Street, very close to the school. I was fortunate enough at times to have shared lunch with him at North Street. So, Gerry was a serious, thoughtful man. But here is a little story that belied true self as a fun-loving person. Enjoyed a joke and a good laugh, unfortunately, at my expense. It came to pass my classroom was on the second floor of PDCI, a nice room that overlooked Darcy Street, and it was really a pleasant location. The corridors on the second floor were fairly narrow, so my corridor was looking this way. Now it so happened the classroom on the opposite side of the corridor was Gerry Brown's. Now, Gerry Brown, when he was at his door, he was at the back of his classroom. In other words, his students were going that way. When he looked across the hallway, and oh, by the way, we never closed our doors, he looked straight at me at the front of my class. My class was facing me this way. Ideal for Gerry. Quite frequently, I would be going great guns, perhaps, over there, and suddenly something would happen. Something's flying down at my feet. What's going on? What's going on? And I look over there, that's Gerry, cavorting at his door, right across from me. At one time, I think there was a sort of a plastic brick that came flying over. This was Gerry's fun time. A little corollary to that, though, he liked to come over to my room with my class in it, and he liked to look along and see who was at the back row. I don't know quite why, but anyway, that's what he liked to do. That was one little thing. Gerry learned that we had a common interest in travel. There was a travel group run by Rita Purcell, which I joined for visits to Europe for the March break. One of the trips I did with Gerry was to Greece. Being seasoned travellers, we gave all the students their boarding passes, sat them down to wait to be called to go on the plane. And we were all waiting to board. Needless to say, we were called, didn't pay attention. All of a sudden, there was a call, get the boarding gate, because your flight is called. Getting 20 students to depart in a hurry. That was one little story. Now, on a more serious side perhaps, Sheila's brother Ira has visited Perth many times from the UK and has met up with Gerry and they got talking together. Now Ira in England had a difficult personal life in the UK. And as a result of his talks with Gerry, he considered Gerry as a much admired friend, and he is very sad at his loss. That's the sort of thing that Gerry was able to do. Okay. Now, there's a few items that happened during his time. He was a bachelor at that time, of course. We were at an auction, a government auction, where they sold all sorts of things that were surplus to requirements. I happened to look at some things that they actually were motorcycles in a box, which I didn't really want. And Gerry was off looking at other things. Now Gerry was very cautious in what he bought and what he did. He was always look ahead and plan things, you would think. Anyway, we started walking away from the auction, and as we came away, he said, that car there, that big blue and white car there, nice looking car. He said, I bought it. I said, you what? He bought the thing. He'd gone and given what he thought was a low bid on this car, and he bought this car. Okay, so he did. Now, another thing. At our place, we were fortunate enough to live at Lakeside, and Gerry loves sailing, and he had a small, well, not that small, but anyway, it was a boat that he kept at our place, at the dock. It had a mainsail and a jib, and he used to come and sail that boat. One of the things was he tried to teach me sailing. Didn't work, although I'd been in the Navy, I didn't know how to sail a boat. Anyway, so he tried to teach me sailing, it didn't work. So that was one thing he did. Gerry sailboat at our place was rather interesting. Now, I at the time was building a house, sort of, that used to be a cottage, and then we were turning it into a house. I'd be up on the top, on the roof, looking down, and there would be Gerry coming along and park his car and walking along with some companions. And we'd go right by, and he goes sailing. And this would happen several times. I never really discovered who his crew were, but there was quite a few of them. Nobody knows what that is. Okay, back to school. For some reason or other, our principal decided that we needed smartening up. Everybody should be properly attired, and proper attire was to wear a tie. Gerry would not wear a tie, despite being pressured by the powers that be. Terry would not and did not wear a tie. Let's see now. Oh, a little visit we had to Gerry's pipe and Sylvia's place. This is obviously a lot later now. It was very, very cold. In fact, it was so cold that all the pipes were freezing up. So Gerry's had a slight problem. Their sewage pipes was blocked, and it was way underneath the cottage, obviously. Now the crawl space underneath, Gerry could not get through. He's rather large, and I'm a lot smaller. He's large, I'm smaller. Who's going to go underneath and cut that pipe? Me. So I go under there, and we cut the pipe, and sure enough, when I brought it up, the thing at this side, and it was solid ice. Gerry was a family man. He was a close, happy family man, proud of his sons, Derek and Andrew, their partners, this has already been mentioned, Jody, Sarah, grandfather to his grandchildren, Aidan, Grayson, Camden, Eisen, Hatley. But all of this, rather than talk about them, you know, they say the picture is worth 1,000 words. Those pictures there, they're really something when you look at them. You see all that family together, and there's no good trying to say, you know, how he loved them all and appreciated them all. You can see it all in the pictures. And all along, of course, Sylvia is like, well, she was Sylvia, very precious to him for 40 years. Very precious. Gerry liked to, well, he was very generous. Gerry and Sylvia had spent some time, we owned a trailer on a place called the Isle of Sheppey in England, and they at one time went to stay at the Sheppey Islands in our trailer, and they really enjoyed themselves there. So a little bit known to me, when Gerry came back some time later, he, actually by this time, Derek was somewhat larger than him. Not, well, about like what he is now, I guess. Gerry came along and they decided they would re-shingle my garage roof. That was the kind of thing Gerry did. I wasn't expecting that, but he did it anyway. He was a great talker. He loved to talk to people. Anyway, another thing to do on the roof of my house at the back, we were re-shingling along the back there. I wasn't on the roof at that time. But I went up there later on and looked across, and like normally shingles run straight along the edge. Well, the first row did, and I'm looking at Gerry, that shingle, they're sort of aiming for the roof up this way. They're not going straight at all. A very polished Gerry. Reads the roof. Oh, it was very cold one winter's day. Actually, it was New Year's Eve. Sheila and I decided to go up to Ottawa to look at the display of lights that they have at the Parliament buildings there. It was very crowded and very cold indeed. And we're standing sort of way back, not quite at the back of the crowd, but back far enough. And we looked down through the crowd and the show and all this. And then Sheila said, "Look down there." And about halfway down there was this person who was tall, obviously tall, but had a large toque on his head. And yes, of course, it was Gerry Brown. So stuck there in the middle of that crowd. Very cold, wasn't it, Sylvia?
Millennium. That was the millennium.
Anyway, we got together. It so happened we had both gone up but in different hotels, so we said hi and then parted for the night. What else? Oh, Gerry lived a full life, teaching his family, his golf, his badminton, his swimming, and his travelling around the world. And I think probably that ends my little talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing those memories, very special ones indeed. I too have been given the honor of paying a tribute to Gerry, so let me begin by a look back at how Gerry, Sylvia, and I met. Gerry and I both started our careers at Perth and District Collegiate. Gerry was a couple of years before me, and soon after, Sylvia joined us there as well. I do believe that Sylvia's decision to accept a position at PDCI was one of the best in her life, not only for her, but for Gerry as well. Gerry and I have always been good friends, and when Sylvia came into his life, I knew that he had met his soulmate. I really believe that Sylvia has saintly qualities, because when Gerry suggested we three should sign up for skiing lessons at Calabogie one winter, Sylvia was fine with that plan. I should probably have bowed out, but I was dating Ken, who is an excellent skier, so I was in desperate need of those lessons. This story actually grew much larger, as prior to March break, Gerry thought, again, the three of us should head to the Eastern Townships to test out our skiing skills, and the plan was, are you ready for this? For the three of us to share a room. I suspect the incredible deal on the room appealed to us, but you should have seen the look on the man's face who was staying opposite us and saw Gerry entering the room with two girls. I can assure you of one thing, Mrs. McMillan, by virtue of my presence, I was an excellent chaperone. Gerry came to Perth in 1972 after first graduating from the University of New Brunswick and then spending a year at Teachers College at Queen's University in Kingston. Gerry was a highly respected history, law, and economics teacher when he was at Perth. He always believed that students should be participating in real-life experiences, so he would set up activities such as a mock debate or an interesting field trip. I remember one field trip in particular where he took his law students to Millhaven Prison for a tour. Everyone had to pass through several doors which automatically locked behind them, so I suspect that left quite an impression on his students, and certainly none of them after that experience would ever be tempted to a life of crime. While at PDCI, Gerry was also a much appreciated student council advisor. A couple of weeks ago, I passed along the news of Gerry's passing to a close friend of mine, Jane Rabb, who also taught at PDCI for a couple of years before she went on to further education. She immediately remembered Gerry as being one of the most positive people she had met in her life, and that indeed was the real Gerry. If you ever asked him how he was, his usual response was, couldn't be better. He always had a smile on his face, and you could count on his wit to bring humor into whatever conversation you were having with him. Gerry also had wonderful stories which he shared with people. His motto was, life is good, and he truly appreciated all his family and friends who played such a large part in his journey. One of Gerry's passions, as Mike indicated, was travel. While he was at PDCI, he led student trips to Italy, Mexico, and Cuba during March breaks. He was always eager to see the world and learn about other cultures. I remember a conversation that we had as we were both approaching retirement. Gerry's intention was to make the most of his first 10 years of retirement. Thankfully, he and Sylvia did just that. In fact, they stretched that time frame out to 15 years. As they traveled the world, Ken and I would visit and hear about their visits to places such as Egypt, South Africa, the Great Wall of China, Portugal, Vietnam, and Mexico. Other times it would be trailer trips to the US, cruise along the western United States, or a month-long stay in Victoria, BC. When the children were young, there were houseboat holidays, along with many other vacation trips. All of these travels were enjoyed, but none were more important than the summer trips to Carter's Point in New Brunswick. Gerry was a true maritimer. He always needed to be near water, and he loved to munch on dulse. Definitely an acquired taste in my mind. Although Gerry's family lived in St. John, his parents, Gordon and Beatrice, began the tradition of spending summers at the camp at Carter's Point on Kingston Peninsula. It was a tradition which Gerry, Sylvia, and family continued for many years until a storm claimed the camp and it was not rebuilt. It was at the camp and on Summer Street, St. John West, where Gerry fondly remembered his childhood. Coincidentally, Beatrice's two sisters, Connie and June, also lived on Summer Street with their families. Gerry, along with his sister Pam and his many cousins, would spend most of their days going back and forth between each other's homes, and of course, sampling homemade goodies at each stop. As Gerry started accumulating extra pounds, his mom decided to take action, and for one day, Gerry had a sign on his back which read, "Do not feed." Gerry never gave up his love of home cooking, but if anyone could exercise restraint, it was the adult Gerry. He was always proud of his good health, nutrition, and exercise. When he and Sylvia joined us for dinners, we could hardly ever convince him of seconds. Coming back to Gerry's career, in 1981, he transferred to Almonton District High School to be closer to his and Sylvia's new home on Mississippi Lake, just outside of Carleton Place. I also transferred that year to ADHS as Ken and I married a few months after Gerry and Sylvia's wedding, and we were living in Ottawa. Gerry initially taught history and law, but his interests broadened, and he was granted by the local Board of Education a year to attend the University of Ottawa to obtain his master's degree in education. As I mentioned earlier, Gerry was a firm believer in real-life experience, and he became a co-op teacher who arranged and supervised many work placements within the community. The co-op program kept many students in school and provided all of them with very valuable experiences. Gerry eventually became department head for the guidance department, which he renamed, more appropriately, Student Services. My principal at that time encouraged me to go into counseling, so after updating my qualifications, I entered Student Service as well. I think I'm beginning to sound like a stalker, but I can assure you that was not the case. Gerry was an excellent department head. He was endowed with wisdom, patience, and common sense. No matter how difficult the day might have been, he had the ability to put everything behind him and somehow find a way to infuse a little bit of humor. We always knew that we could bounce things off each other if we were encountering any problems or planning big initiatives. Another important role which Gerry filled during his time in education was his work with the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation. He was a staunch supporter of teachers' rights and was a valued member of the local affiliation where he engaged in contract negotiations. Throughout Gerry's career and into his retirement, he was also extremely active, as Mike mentioned, in athletic activities. As we know from sitting in this venue, golf was his true passion. He played his last game of golf here as a member of the Mississippi Golf Club just a few days before his 72nd birthday on August 8th of this summer. Badminton with the Beckwith Badminton Club was a close second, but I suspect that happened because snowy conditions drove him off the golf course. Lunch hours at the high school meant a short time to eat, and then Gerry would be off for his daily walk. At the Carleton Place pool, Gerry was a regular swimming laps. He also loved to cycle, and he whether it be to the pool or to pick up a few groceries. Gerry water skied until he was 70, and he was extremely upset that COVID curtailed his winter skiing. For many years, Gerry was a community soccer coach, and according to Al Roach, whose son he coached, Gerry was the perfect role model for that position. Gerry loved soccer, as he saw the benefits of it being a team sport and one that promoted physical and mental exercise. While at Almont High School, Gerry assisted in coaching the ski team and was also at one point a staff advisor for the Students' Council. When I was going through a few of the school yearbooks, I came across a picture of Gerry taken at one of our Christmas staff productions. There was Gerry in a woman's dress and wig trying to jam his foot into Cinderella's slipper. Before retirement, Gerry qualified as a financial planner and built a small part-time business. He knew that I belonged to an investment club, so of course he would be keen to know which stocks were making us the most money. Gerry could discuss just about anything with people. He was an avid reader, and he was extremely up to date with what was happening throughout the world. As we reflect on Gerry's life, I can assure you that what meant the most to him was family and friends. Gerry was blessed to have Sylvia at his side for the past 40+ years, and he knew that so well. Gerry was 31 when he and Sylvia married, and there was no one more excited and grateful than Bea, Gerry's mother. She shared that she was almost at the point of giving up hope. I think that Sylvia's family was equally as excited when that wedding occurred. Gerry and Sylvia began their adventure together by honeymooning in Whistler and then heading off a couple of years later for a big trip to Australia and New Zealand. Gerry was over the moon when Derek and Andrew came into their lives. He always wanted to be a dad and to be able to share with his boys many of the opportunities he had when he was growing up. Part of summer vacation was always spent at Carter's Point or on a soccer pitch, and winter meant skiing holidays along with hockey practices. In one of our conversations this summer, Gerry was so happy that Andrew had secured a new job, found a wonderful partner in Sarah, and had just bought a new home. Gerry was extremely proud of the accomplishments of both Derek and Andrew, in that they had families, homes, and good jobs. Derek and Jody, you led the way into another important chapter of Gerry's life. He was absolutely thrilled to be a grandfather to Hayden, Brayson, and Camden, and he seized every opportunity that he could to spend time with the boys. There were annual camping trips, stays at Carter's Point, and a special train trip to Toronto. Gerry complained to me that school and other activities were cutting down on his time with the boys, as he and Sylvia loved being with them. Just recently, 2 new grandchildren have joined the family. Andrew and Sarah brought Isaac and Hatley into the Brown family, and Gerry and Sylvia enjoyed getting to know them. Gerry's sister Pam and his cousins with whom he grew up back in those days on Summer Street have always meant a great deal to Gerry, and he ensured that he kept in touch and whenever possible would get together with them. Gerry was also embraced by Sylvia's family, the McMillans of Avonmore, and I believe it was Mrs. McMillan who cottoned on to the fact that something was amiss last year as Gerry was not visiting as much. I suspect all of us were very much caught off guard when we received Gerry's email in February informing us of his illness and the experimental T-cell therapy he was about to undergo. My first thought was, Gerry is one of the fittest people in the universe, so this will work. I sense his doctors also felt that as they told him he was in excellent health otherwise, and was the perfect candidate for the new therapy. Gerry himself always felt that he was lucky in life, so I think we all subscribed to that optimism. Sadly, it was not to be, but here we are, celebrating a life very well lived, and a person much loved who will live on in our hearts and memories. Gerry has meant very much to all of us, but none more so than to Sylvia, Derek, and Andrew. Gerry would have loved this gathering, and I think his message to us would have been, life is good. Make the most of it. In a few short weeks, there will be another celebration as Andrew and Sarah are getting married on October 22nd. Gerry's spirit will be smiling down on them. Before we conclude the celebration, on behalf of Sylvia and family, I again thank all of you for being here, and you are wished safe travels wherever you go. Good night, all.